Dickerson within the black. Um, Listen, glad to have you out there. Happy to be here. You know, could be a good golf day, but I had a lot of stuff going on today, so I wasn't able to really. I hadn't been able to get to the golf course. I've been pretty busy on today, and I hope you've had a great day, a great morning, afternoon. To just be honest with you, I am recording this, and so when you see it on Wednesday, it will have already been recorded. That is full disclosure from me on my part, because it's going to be a busy week, crazy week for me. But I didn't want to miss the opportunity to come and, first of all, to tell you how much I really appreciate you following me. I really appreciate you looking at the In the Black YouTube video, subscribing to my YouTube channel, following me on Facebook and on the other social media. I can't tell you how much I appreciate that, how much it means to me when you like it or comment or share it, or let me know that you heard it. So thank you all so very much for being a part of this, and I really consider you all part of what we're doing here. Not just folks that I'm preaching to or talking to, but actually, my goal, of course, is to engage with you. My other goal, of course, is to try to see what I can do from my position with the Birmingham Business Resource Center and the A.G. Gaston Business Institute to help you start, grow, and develop businesses, or my position with Building Alabama Reinvestment to help you start, grow, and develop your nonprofit organization. And I'm going to talk a bit about that today, but I have to start off with a somber note. You all know, you've heard me say that this whole idea of In the Black came about and then started with our radio program, the Myriad Gospel Music Countdown. And so it's with that, we started the countdown 25 years ago, this past February. We've been on every week since then up until just recently. And there's a reason that we were still on but didn't produce a show. I should say that. We're still on, but we didn't produce a show. But our partner, good friend, engineer, producer, and the person who behind the scenes was most responsible for the countdown airing and being recorded and being produced and getting out to, at one point, which was about 90 radio stations, passed away a couple of weeks ago, a little bit more than 2 weeks ago. And so the loss of Doug Ford, I want to acknowledge that from me and my partner, Ron Marshall, and our co-host, Bridget Cannon, we really already miss Doug Ford. Doug, again, was an integral part of what we did. He was such a nice guy, such a pleasant human being, somebody who was always willing to help, somebody that even in the midst, and you can imagine, in doing a production, sometimes there are glitches and things that go wrong, and you have to do things over, and sometimes there are malfunctions, there's technical stuff that goes on. But Doug was the one who, despite of whatever kind of technical or even sometimes the difficulty might have been with us, no matter what the difficulty was, he was always, even keel, kind of held it together, and he never, ever showed any kind of frustration. And so Doug's memorial service was last Saturday, and I was privileged to get a chance to say a few words about him there. And one thing that I said, if you called Doug on the phone and you said, "Hey, Doug, what's happening or what's up?" he was known to say the usual stuff. And I can just say that over the past couple of weeks since we lost Doug, none of us have really felt like it was the usual stuff, because his passing was certainly unexpected, and still we are still in shock. So, I just want to and thinking about In the Black, which first aired on the countdown, and thinking about Doug's position with the countdown, I certainly would have been remiss not to initially share some of my thoughts, my concern, and my prayers and condolences certainly still go out to his family, his children, and all of his friends. He had a wonderful memorial service on Saturday with a lot of notable musicians. Doug was a musician as well, as a songwriter and engineer, and sound man, and he built the studios. Every studio suite that Doug went in, he did some carpentry work. So I'm going to have to give him credit as being a carpenter as well. So anyway, I wanted to make sure that I got that in. Just on the 18th, which is the day I'm recording this, you're going to see this tomorrow, the 19th, on Wednesday. But we just finished the Building Alabama Reinvestment Conference, the 11th annual Building Alabama Reinvestment Conference. I've talked to you about it. You can see it on our website, which is buildingalabama.org, if you want to catch it. And plus, I'm going to be sharing pieces of that conference, some of the presentations and some of the speeches on social media, probably for the next month or so. So, if you didn't get a chance to get on today, then you will get a chance to hear pieces and elements of the conference. I thought it went really well. It was virtual. I don't know about you, but I'm, if I didn't keep, I like virtual. I like doing stuff like this virtual. And virtual is probably going to be the way we do a lot of stuff, because I think that we've, over the last year and a half, we've conditioned ourselves to just be okay with it. Boy, I can't wait, though, till we have the opportunity to do one of these conferences, the A.G. Gaston Conference or the Bar Conference or some conference, the NCRC Conference in person. But I do want to just acknowledge some of the things that happened today at the Building Alabama Reinvestment Conference. Now, my good friend John Taylor, who was the founder of the National Community Reinvestment Coalition, has been known to say that banks are our community's best hope. Banks that have a law that requires them to make investments, to provide loans, and to service all communities, including low and moderate income communities. That's a law that financial institutions have to adhere to. And so the more we know, folks out here in the community, the more we know about A, the law, the more we know about B, the way banks intend to adhere to the regulation by helping the communities, the more we can position ourselves to be a conduit for some of that help. And so it is a win-win-win situation. When we can be a conduit to help banks help communities, then our organizations, if you run a nonprofit like me, we win. The bank wins because they adhere to a law that they are being evaluated on. And the ultimate winner are our communities, and that's who the ultimate winner ought to be in this case. And so I just encourage all of you, especially those of you in the nonprofit world, but some of you who aren't, to really understand that there's a role for banks to play, but there's also opportunities. There are also opportunities for us to work with banks to make sure that they can play their role to the best of their ability. So we had a great conference today, and it featured a training session that Pamelia Harris, who is the executive director of the Hub CDC, that's a community housing development organization. She also is a national expert. She talked about resiliency for your nonprofit organization. How do you bounce back? How did you manage through COVID and through 2020? And how do you bounce back? What are some of the lessons that we learned and that organizations learned nationally that we can share with folks here in Alabama? So that was great. Then we heard from 6 or 7 financial institutions just detailing what they do, what they like to do, how they do it, what they've done, and offering our people an opportunity to hear that information and then to develop strategies and programs and processes and partnerships in order to take advantage of what these banks do and what they like to do, so that we make sure that we can take what they'd like to do and what they do and their programs and make that work for our community. So we get supported by a lot of banks. We have partnerships with a lot of banks. So, I just want to thank my friends that participated in that program, Melody Morissette with BBVA, Delpha Bartley Jones with Valley Bank, Tracy Morant Adams with Renaissance Bank, Paul Carruthers with Regions Bank, Paula Beck with Wells Fargo, and Beth Trotter with Iberia First Horizon. All of you did an outstanding job of explaining your bank's philosophy and then getting into some of the programs and projects that you're involved with. And I'm proud to say that with most of the banks that we had on our program today, that our organization, the BBRC, partners with each and every one of those organizations in some way. And so I'm very happy and very proud of that. We then heard from some of our members. Now, we have a lot of members, and we could only choose like 4 because of time constraints, and we chose 4 that were not necessarily the best known, but some ones that we thought had an interesting story, and they did. So we had Lisa McCarroll from Navigate Affordable Housing Partners that talked about some of the things they're doing, especially in the Titusville community, which I thought was great information. Chris Rowe, who heads up the Community Action Agencies of Alabama, he really broke it down because we have those community action agencies serve the entire state. All 67 counties are served. There are 20 of them. And each one of them is unique in its approach and sort of tailors their approach and programs to what they need, what those communities that they serve need. And we know that we have a big fight on our hands to try to overcome poverty and the vestiges of poverty and segregation and discrimination. And so to have these programs that are out here with people every day, not only treating the symptoms that, the impact that poverty has, but to also try to have some anti-poverty, some ways to make sure that people have affordable housing, can build wealth, can get employment. Those things are really critical and key to helping to sustain and grow people in our communities. We also had Isabel Rubio, one of the other bar board members. Pamelia Harris is a bar board member, who talked about her organization, the Hispanic Interest Coalition, and many of their programs, and the need, as Alabama has become even more diverse, the need to have diverse organizations and diverse approaches to solving problems of a diverse community. It's really critical that we have that. And then to hear her talk about their burgeoning lending program, their micro lending program, where those groups of folks who are deciding on each other's loans have been so dedicated and so conscientious and made such good decisions that none of the loans have had any defaults. I mean, that is amazing and tremendous. And having been and still being a person who is into lending or a loan officer, I've been a loan officer for much of my career. In a way, I'm still a loan officer. To have lending done where there are no defaults is tremendous. It shows that those folks are making good decisions. It also tells you something about the borrowers, that the borrowers, because every borrower doesn't have just a real positive experience with the business. Sometimes businesses have challenges, but to overcome business challenges and to still be willing and able to handle your responsibility and obligations as it relates to paying the loan back, that is critical as well. And then we had Pastor Van Moody, who represented the Hub CDC, who they're working on a comprehensive community development project because if we're going to do community development, and this is the message that he conveyed, we've got to hit all of the tentacles. We've got to hit all of the points. We've got to develop small businesses. We've got to develop affordable housing. We've got to make sure that we protect good health and maintain healthy living. We've got to have, healthy choices as it relates to food, workout, exercise, etc. A holistic approach to really developing community is important. You can't just have one thing and expect the others and have the others lag behind. I mean, you can't have great businesses if your people aren't healthy, and the people can't be healthy unless they have access to recreation as well as healthy food. And so, I'm looking forward to hearing more about the plans that the Hub CDC has around, a major comprehensive community development effort. So once again, thanks to them. And then to the Chief Executive Officer of the National Community Reinvestment Coalition, Jesse Van Tall, who talked about some of the things that are happening in D.C., talked about, things that we have to continue to be, he used the term angry about and willing to strive and even push and fight for. And then talked about the $300 billion that the NCRC has put into these community benefits agreements. And I am saying to you, and he said it as well, let us help make sure that as much of that can go in our communities in Birmingham and all over the state of Alabama, that we do that. And that's going to require us working together. That's going to require us being in coalition with each other. And it's going to also require that we help our organizations build capacity so that we can help absorb and help our communities consume those dollars. By my count right now, there are about 5 financial institutions that either are engaged in a community benefits agreement or have one pending. So 4 engaged, 1 pending. That's a quick count that operate in our state. And so I just want to encourage all of us, if you're a church with a nonprofit organization, if you're a community-based nonprofit organization, no matter how big or small you are, then let's talk. Let's talk. Let me see if I can help position you to benefit and position your community and the folks that you serve to benefit. Banks are our community's best hope. So with that being said, and before I get out of here, I want to preview something that we're going to be doing from time to time, on In the Black, but on some of the other the other messaging and the other platforms that we're using. Primarily, this will be the next series of bar events. But we're gonna highlight things that banks and communities, or things that banks and community groups can do together to improve the lives of people in those communities. Things that banks and communities can do together to make things better in these communities. And so we know, as I mentioned, that banks have Community Reinvestment Act requirements. We also know, and I've talked a bit about this on prior broadcasts, that the regulation is changing. The prior administration in D.C. under Trump really wanted to weaken CRA, in my opinion, and make it easier for banks to pass the test without doing as much for communities. Thank God the Biden administration doesn't appear to have that same mindset. And it also appears that the regulators, and the regulators are the OCC, Trump, the president appoints the Secretary of Treasury and then appoints the head of the OCC, the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. Those are the regulators, and the CFPB has some regulatory authority, but I don't want to get too detailed on that. But the point is that regulation is changing, as well as the banking landscape. And when I said the banking landscape, I mean you've seen a lot of mergers and acquisitions. PNC right now is going to be acquiring BBVA. That affects Alabama. Bancorp South and Cadence Bank have filed with their regulatory authority their intent to merge, or it looks like that Bancorp South is going to be purchasing Cadence. The Truist, which was BB&T and SunTrust. So Truist, BB&T, and SunTrust merged to combine to form Truist. And then Iberia and First Horizon. Iberia was headquartered in New Orleans, First Horizon in Tennessee, and they have merged a few years back. And so all of those mergers and acquisition activity affect us here in Birmingham. All of those banks are either engaged in or will be engaged in a community benefits agreement that can help. So the banking landscape is changing. But I want to talk about, and we'll get into more detail about all of this in the future. And hopefully, if anybody has any questions about this, about how we might help them in with BAR, or how I might help you, then I want to just make sure that you know that that I'm available. But just a couple of things that came to my mind right off the bat was we need to foster more affordable housing. The housing stock is lower than it's been. Home ownership is lower than it's been in probably 50 years. And so what we have to do is we have to create an environment where it is attractive and affordable, but also profitable to own a home. And all too often, that is not the case, especially in many of our low and moderate income communities. We also have to protect our communities against folks who just want to come in and buy up all the property because they have a lot of cash, and there's a lot of cash circulating out here looking for something to invest in. Well, the stock market's shaky. The bond market doesn't have a high return, or as high a return as people want. You can't put your money in the bank and get any kind of return. So a lot of money is chasing real estate, and so that but those institutional buyers, they aren't promoting home ownership. They're promoting living in houses that you rent, and so that is not necessarily good for our community. So, one of the things that we can do with banks is to work together to foster more affordable housing and more home ownership, to provide the financial tools to purchasers and developers. That's what the banks need to do. And then the folks on our side have to identify, qualify, and counsel purchasers. And then we all have to work together to make sure that the existing housing stock is improved and maintained so that we don't allow it to keep going down and we end up tearing down as many houses as we build, in some cases tearing down more houses than we build. So that's just one thing, and we'll get into further detail on that. Another idea that we'll develop over time is this whole idea about enhancing financial literacy. Financial literacy is something that some of us may take for granted that everybody has. Some folks, grandparents taught them, parents taught them, but everybody doesn't get that, and everybody hasn't gotten that. And the tools and things that are happening in the financial and money world are changing, and it requires us staying abreast and up to date. So whatever we can do to enhance financial literacy, more knowledge about money, more knowledge about the economy, then that's going to be great for us. And so banks are interested in doing that through some of their volunteer efforts, but they need our help because we need to bolster their ability to train and educate the people that we come in contact with, and we need to provide those tools and products to as many folks, including younger people. Most people develop a lot of their habits, including financial habits, in their very early years. And sometimes if we develop poor habits, it actually affects us as we get into adulthood. And if you're a people who, like folks who don't have a lot of money anyway, making poor decisions, not really having a great understanding, uh, actually is more of a penalty because you can't bail yourself out, and nor do you have other people who can bail you out. So this whole financial literacy piece is very important. It's an ideal way for us to improve the coming generation's ability to really play in this financial system. Uh, the other thing, and obviously, this is not an exhaustive list. There'll be others, but I just want to mention two more real quick before I get out of here. But we still have to aggressively promote small business growth and development. Inside of that small business, we have to make sure that businesses owned by African Americans, businesses owned by Black and brown people, businesses that serve low and moderate income communities, businesses that employ people from low and moderate income communities have to be at the top of the list of the folks that we're going to promote and serve, the folks that we're going to help to grow. And when I say aggressively, I mean aggressively. I mean, we can't be passive in our approaches to help grow those groups of businesses. No holds barred, Katie bar the door, all those expressions that we use to say that we're going to really get it done. We've got to really get it done. Business growth is important. It creates workforce. It creates opportunities for people to work. It creates wealth. It helps families survive. It takes away the glass ceiling so that people can really throw themselves into their work, into their business ownership. But you gotta promote and support that because it's not easy. But in order for us to be a competitive nation, as we become more demographically brown, we have got to help Black and brown people succeed in business at a better rate than we are doing it right now. And it's got to be something that we do. It's got to be something that we put our whole selves, and when I say we, I mean all of our stakeholders, major corporations, government, both federal, state, and local government, small businesses, consumers, you name it, we're all on the list of the we that need to actively promote small business growth and development. And then the last thing, and this might be a little bit selfish, is, I run a nonprofit. Some of you do too. But nonprofits are important. We're helpful. But we also need help to build our capacity so we can do more. If you're like my nonprofit, we are every year, we're basically making sure that we can consistently have the funding to be able to support our activities. And so part of what we're always doing is we're always fundraising. And our fundraising and fund development work, when you're small, that takes away from your delivering the product or service that you should be delivering. So yes, one of the things that banks and community groups can do together is to really understand the fact that we must help our nonprofit community build capacity. We've got to have, and Pamelia said this today, and so did a couple other folks. Beth Trotter, one of the from Iberia First Horizon, said this. We've got to have sophisticated nonprofit organizations that know exactly what they're doing and they're able to deliver. And so what we need is help to start, grow, develop nonprofits and make sure that that nonprofit community has and builds capacity. So we're going to be talking more about this. I wanted to give you, that's like the tip of the iceberg. We're going to go deep in the weeks to come as we follow up on the lessons and the messages that we heard on today's bar conference. Listen, I'm glad to be here on In the Black. Glad to have you out there. Again, I am willing and I think able to help you. And so if you need my help on the, joining bar or anything to do with your nonprofit, or need our help, related to your small business, then just feel free to contact us at any time. Reach out to me on social media. Visit my website, bobdickerson.com. I'll see you again next week. This is Bob Dickerson, Within the Black.